He was the kind of person that you were just attracted to. He was such a good friend. He was so funny. His personality was so outgoing, and it was like he had never met a stranger.
First, I just knew him as a friend, a person that I knew. And then I knew him as a fraternity brother in Omega Psi Phi. And then I knew him as a student. And it's amazing that even though those are three different areas, some of the same characteristics blended over.
He just seemed like he had like a dynamic character where he was going to get to know you. He was on the Lime team. They had a pretty tight-knit team there. And Catherine, the vice president of the Online MBA program, she was friends with him for years. So they had been friends, I think about 15 years. They did undergraduate school together here at Louisville. And so she was the first person to introduce me to like who Stanley was. She was excited about him being in this program.
Well, he worked in the intramural department for U of L athletics, and he was in charge of intramural activities for all of the organizations, which included the sorority that I was in. I was the intramural chair, so Stanley and I really got to know each other over that year.
His impact was truly, genuinely inspiring to his peers. He lifted up his team, he lifted up his cohort, and he did so in a way that didn't draw attention to himself, but did so because he was genuinely interested in other people.
And one of the four cardinal principles of our fraternity is manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. And Stanley had all of those, you know.
And he was open to learning and experiencing, you know, all the things that came with it as a team, with each other. And I found that pretty encouraging as we got to know each other further along, that at the very core, he was a friend to pretty much anybody who would take the time to get to know him or he took interest in. And he cared. He was a genuinely good person that was excited. Those kind of people are always, you know, you're drawn to them.
The fraternity has all kinds of programs that we're reaching out to community. You know, we're talking about like voter registration, we're talking about feeding the hungry, we're talking about, you know, Thanksgiving baskets, Christmas baskets. He was always in the forefront of leading those committees, you know. And like I said, it was all about giving back. It wasn't about what he could take out of it.
I think it really put out there how close we all became without being in person. Sometimes I think the online model gets a stigma of you don't know anybody, you're not close, you're not familiar with the people that you go to school with. And I think this was important to us to make it known that that was not the case.
How do we make sure that this continues, this lives on, that we share Stanley's legacy, that character that he had, a friendship and community and building people up, uplift? How do we make sure that that doesn't end with my cohort or with, you know, with Stanley?
So when Dustin and I started talking about what we could do to involve the cohort, especially Stanley's team, the Lime team, you know, there were not a lot of options that we could think of. Obviously, we wanted to remember him and his legacy and all of the people that he impacted in the cohort, but trying to figure out what we could do was really the stopping point. The more that we talked about it with Dr. Goldman, the more that the idea came to light.
It wasn't until I saw the dedication in our students who rallied around Stanley that I fully started to understand what he meant to the cohort and what our cohort means to the overall process of earning an online degree.
And I always like to say, don't say that you love something if you're not willing to commit to it. And I'm willing to commit, and even more if I have to to the Stanley Hall Scholarship.
Just because you're in an online model doesn't mean that people don't care and that, you know, we all can't work together for a common goal and a common good, especially when it was to remember Stanley.
As I look back over the last 20 months, especially when I look back with Stanley, this would be the time that I would be meeting Stanley in person for the first time. And I think that's probably the most difficult part when you think about where he would be now.
We had started the program together, and I was hoping to end the program together. We worked so hard through statistics and financial accounting. I wanted him to be there to finish the program.
But really, it was about a legacy. You know, Stanley Hall made an impact on every person that he touched, and he was still pursuing, you know, excellence as a professional.
All students needed to have somebody to go through this process with together. But it wasn't until we saw the effects that Stanley's lasting impression left on his peers that we really began to understand the significance of Stanley as a human, as a person, and also what he stood for.
Somebody said that if a person could live a lifetime and only had 2 friends, they would be lucky. Stanley was one of those friends.